At 26 years old, Milton Hershey stood on a street corner in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with nothing but empty pockets and a reputation for failure. To the local business community, he wasn't a visionary. He was a cautionary tale. He had already burned through two separate bankruptcies. He had exhausted every family loan he could touch. His own uncles, men who had once believed in his potential, now crossed the street to avoid him. He had walked away from Philadelphia beaten. He had crawled back from New York City in even worse shape. At this point in his life, chocolate meant absolutely nothing to him. In the late 1800s, chocolate was an expensive luxury, a delicacy reserved for the elite. People with the kind of money Milton had never even seen, let alone possessed. But very soon, this failed entrepreneur would discover the one secret ingredient capable of making his name a household staple across the entire globe. This isn't just a story about candy. This is a masterclass in how to turn repeated public humiliation into a $10 billion empire. The apprentice nobody wanted Milton's journey into the world of labor didn't start with a silver spoon. It started with a printing press. At 14, his father, a man known more for his big dreams than his actual results, pushed him into an apprenticeship with Sam Ernst's German-English newspaper. The work was grueling and repetitive. The owner was a man with a short fuse and a loud voice. Milton hated every second of it. He lacked the patience for the meticulous nature of typesetting, and after months of struggling with the machinery, he reached a breaking point. In a moment of teenage rebellion that would foreshadow his all-in business style, he took his hat and threw it directly into the gears of the printing press, sabotaging the machine. He was fired on the spot. While his father was furious, his mother, Fanny Hershey, saw something others didn't. She realized the printing job wasn't a fit for Milton's temperament. She searched for a trade that matched his quiet focus and found Joseph Royer's confectionery in Lancaster. This was a place where candy and ice cream were still made by hand using ancient recipes. Formulas weren't written down in textbooks. They were passed from master to apprentice through observation and intuition. Initially, Royer didn't trust the failed printer with the candy. Milton was relegated to washing dishes, delivering orders, and scrubbing floors. It was Fanny who intervened again, offering to pay Royer out of her own pocket to ensure her son was actually taught the trade. That investment paid off. Milton began to understand the language of sugar, how it behaved under intense heat, how timing changed texture, and how to stretch ingredients without sacrificing quality. While his father mocked the trade as women's work, Milton was busy mastering the mechanics of a repeatable skill tied to actual human demand. The art of losing everything. By the time Milton finished his apprenticeship, he had the skills, but he didn't have the experience of the market. In 1876, he headed to Philadelphia to open his first shop. The timing seemed perfect. The city was hosting the Centennial International Exhibition, and millions of tourists were flooding the streets. For a while, the business hummed. He sold candy, ice cream, and nuts to massive crowds. But as soon as the exhibition ended, the customers vanished. Milton was left with high fixed costs and a rising price of sugar. He borrowed from relatives, convinced that persistence was the same thing as a strategy. It wasn't. By age 24, exhausted and buried in debt, he filed for his first bankruptcy. Most people would have quit. Milton just moved. He traveled to Denver, New Orleans, Chicago, and eventually New York, working in other people's candy shops and acting like a corporate spy for his own future. In Denver, he noticed something revolutionary. A local confectioner was using fresh milk in his caramels instead of the industry-standard paraffin wax. The result was a caramel that was smoother, richer, and had a much longer shelf life. He tried to launch a caramel business in New York using this fresh milk method. Early sales were promising, but the cutthroat New York market was unforgiving. Larger companies with deeper pockets squeezed him out. By 1886, at age 29, he failed for the second time. When he returned to Lancaster this time, the reception was cold. His family had officially written him off. He couldn't even afford to ship his personal belongings back home. From the outside, Milton Hershey looked like a drifter who confused effort with achievement. But he had brought one thing back from Denver that no one could take away: the secret of the fresh milk caramel. The British importer and the lucky break Milton started over in a tiny, cramped space. making small batches of caramels by hand and selling them from a basket on the street. When he was obsessed with perfecting the recipe he'd seen in Denver. Through endless repetition, he created the Crystal A caramel. The breakthrough came from a source he never expected. A British importer happened to taste one of Milton's caramels and was stunned by the flavor. He placed a massive order, enough to put Hershey on the map, on one condition: the shipment had to survive the long journey across the Atlantic without spoiling. Milton didn't have the money to fulfill the order. He went to a local bank, and because of his history of bankruptcy, the bank officially said no. However, a bank cashier who had been watching Milton work late every night, seeing his efficiency and the quality of his product, decided to do something unheard of. He personally guaranteed the loan. It was the ultimate high-stakes gamble. If the shipment spoiled, Milton was finished. If it arrived, he was a millionaire. Weeks passed in silence. Finally, a letter arrived. Inside was a check for 500 British pounds. The caramels were a hit. For the first time in his life, Milton's persistence had finally converted into momentum. The million-dollar pivot. By the 1890s, the Lancaster Caramel Company was an absolute juggernaut. Milton employed over 1,000 people and was making over $1 million a year, an astronomical sum in the 19th century. He was finally a success. He had the respect, the money, and the stability he had craved his entire life. But Milton became restless. He realized that while caramels were profitable, they were difficult to mass-produce and easy for competitors to copy. In 1893, when he visited the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago and saw something that changed his life: German chocolate-making machinery. While others saw a novelty, Milton saw the future. He bought the equipment on the spot and shipped it to Lancaster. He began experimenting in the corners of his caramel factory, trying to do for chocolate what he had done for caramels: make it better, cheaper, and more accessible. His advisors thought he was insane. Why risk a guaranteed caramel fortune on a product that only the rich could afford? Milton ignored them. In 1900, he did the unthinkable. He sold the Lancaster Caramel Company for $1 million. He walked away from a sure thing to bet everything on a chocolate bar that didn't even exist yet. The 5-cent revolution. Milton didn't just want to make chocolate, he wanted to make it a staple. He moved his operations to the middle of a cornfield in Derry Township. People called it Hershey's Folly. It was isolated and rural, but Milton wanted to be near the dairy farms for a constant supply of fresh milk. The problem? Milk chocolate is notoriously difficult to stabilize. It burned, it curdled, and it spoiled. For 3 years, Milton and his team failed. They tried powdered milk, condensed milk, and every ratio imaginable. Finally, they perfected a process using condensed milk that allowed for mass production and a long shelf life. In 1900, the first Hershey's bar was born. But the real genius wasn't the recipe, it was the price. He sold them for 5 cents. By pricing it at a nickel, he made chocolate accessible to children, factory workers, and families. He didn't sell it in high-end boutiques, he put it in general stores. And he treated chocolate like infrastructure, not a luxury. By 1906, sales crossed $1 million a year. The 5-cent revolution had turned a rural cornfield into the chocolate capital of the world. A legacy beyond the bar. As his wealth grew into the tens of millions, Milton's focus shifted. Having grown up poor and seen his father struggle, he wanted to build something more than a factory. He built a town. He built modern housing, schools, churches, and transit for his workers. During the Great Depression, when other companies were laying people off, Milton started massive construction projects just to keep his employees paid. Because he and his wife, Catherine, could not have children, they turned their fortune toward those who had the least. In 1909, they founded the Hershey Industrial School for Orphan Boys. When in a move that shocked the financial world, Milton eventually transferred the vast majority of his wealth and control of the company itself into a trust for the school. He didn't just give away money, he gave away the empire. He famously said, "One is only happy in proportion as he makes others feel happy." Milton Hershey passed away in 1945, but his unique business model ensures he is still working today. Because the company is largely controlled by the school trust. Every time someone buys a Reese's cup or a Hershey bar, they are directly funding the education and housing of thousands of children in need. Milton Hershey started as a twice bankrupt failure who sabotaged his first job with a hat. He ended as a man who reshaped the American economy by proving that a product for everyone is worth more than a product for the few. So, Hamran, what do you think was Milton Hershey's greatest achievement? Was it perfecting the milk chocolate recipe that changed an industry? Or was it the radical decision to give his entire fortune away to children he would never meet? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the grit behind the world's most famous chocolate, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories on the icons who built the modern world.